hello. So here is one more episode of the new EAVI Conversations. We have Lee Hibbard, that is an old friend. So Lee is many things, but for the sake of this, we'll just introduce him as well. The very least that I have to say, Lee, is that you are part of the EAVI Advisory Board. The focus of the conversation of this series will talk about AI, and in particular we would like to have your reflections about human agency. And so shall we start? Are you comfortable with the subject?
Very good.
It means yes. And Sam Altman was saying the other day that is, dear employers, you won't need to employ any more people in a short while. AI will do it all for you. Are humans going to be replaced by AI everywhere?
I think that it's a good question. I think it's a good place to start, which is that since when is it ever a good idea to replace humans? I mean, we are social animals and we need to be together. And that means at the workplace, that means outside the workplace. I mean, why do we work? We work to live. We live to be together and to provide and to be well, and to pull people, extract people from environments which can be social, and to make them maybe more lonely, more isolated, without purpose is, for me, is the wrong way. I think it's a hype. I think there's a lot of hype. Of course, there's a desperate need to keep becoming better, improving things, to make more money, to get more investment, to grow. And certainly there are, of course, if you do follow the news, you'll see that there is some discussion about this bubble happening, and this is going to crash. The take-up of AI in the workplace is happening, but perhaps not scaled across organizations. I mean, that we'll see. We can talk about that.
But I mean, if neither of the two extreme scenarios, too much fear or AI is going to solve everything, it's likely to be that there will be a bit in between. No,
I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. Who can? But I think that I think we have a duty, Paolo, to ask the right questions and to say that's the wrong question, or that's the wrong way to pitch it. I think to push back on those who say it's going to replace. Well, I push back and say, I don't want it to replace. I don't want it to take over everything. Don't tell me that narrative. My narrative is something else. And if it's a human narrative, it certainly is something else. So I think we really need to empower people to make people able to say, that's not my narrative.
We should not delegate completely the answer to AI, because it's otherwise we are...
Totally. Of course we shouldn't delegate it. But the thing with the AI is that it tends to suck you in. It makes things a little bit easier sometimes. And then we lose the muscle of the brain to question and to challenge. And instead of doing the legwork to find out the real reply, the real response, or to find out the real information, it's very easy just to go onto some generative AI and get a very quick summary and say, oh, that's the truth. For those people who grow up with AI and who are going to do a PhD, a PhD is a lot of work for those who want to do lots of work and to explore texts and articles and thinking and discussion. If now that's going to be sort of half replaced or more by, summaries from AI, and one can use AI, of course, now. It's a legitimate tool to use. That thinking, that effort probably won't be as great as before. So I wonder what the value is if we're now resorting to quick fix AI summaries to help.
There will be certainly a part of humanity, including students and including, is a PhD that will use is AI in that way, and therefore the cognitive capacity is likely to shrink, because you don't exercise your brain to solve certain problems, and therefore
brain rot.
But do you think that there is also for maybe a minority, but is the other possibility that this will enhance their thinking, so they will learn to think in a different way, or to think so that they wouldn't have been capable without AI?
A good question, but I think actually one thing we need to be conscious of is that when we all talk about these things, is that we pitch it as if it's negative or positive. And in my opinion, I mean, until this moment in this podcast, it sounds like I'm negative, but actually, I think it's a great tool. I think it's really useful. I use it. I think it's very useful, but that's because I feel I know it's a machine. That's because I feel that I know that I will use it only in certain circumstances to help, but with a quality checking over it. I'm not going to just let it. I'm not just going to lie down and take the information. But that's because I'm working and thinking in different fields. For ordinary people just going about their business, their life, checking this and asking that, yeah, fine. But
so you
it's
are
very, very
part of
positive.
the elite in now being capable of using it well. Although it's increasingly difficult.
I mean, I work in a field where the quality of the work is important. So therefore, there's zero chance that I can rely upon a chat GPT summary or something. I will use it in a context to maybe help reframe something. But in terms of the content, I will not rely upon that. I will use my own sources, and I'll make sure that it's properly sourced and properly, it's based upon on approved documents, for example.
You have worked a lot in ethics, and where do values and morals and ethics sit within this?
Of course, it's very, very important. And I would say that the thing is that we're in a transition, Paolo. I think that this hype and this moment is one where it's a bit like moving fast and breaking things. We're doing things at speed, scale, not really training people in that transition to overcome being left behind. And to be honest, I mean, I see that there are some gaps of the workforce are not really being trained up or to manage the transition, to be part of the response to using AI. It really depends, but I think what's really key is that if for example, doctors, people with an education who are important for people from a human cognition point of view, if you don't bring them with the change, then are they going to be left behind? I mean, are we going to just rely upon the machines and the numbers to say, oh, okay, I'll have that treatment, or that's probably the probability of the success is probably that. Okay, fine. But it's really a lot more than that. So I think it's really important from a human point of view to make sure that people are part of the solution, embracing tools to help, but not just keeping human in the loop, but making really humans an effective, responsible, still in control of the end product, which means to say that you really need to empower them and to give them the feeling that they are still important. They will always be important. They must understand that. And the key is that transition. We're in this transition, and we'll be in this transition for the next few years. We must get that right, and that means humans. That means a human-centric approach.
It seems that there is no as such a choice, is because technology is there, but still we have to remind ourselves that there is this human agency for the time being, and whether or not to use it and how. Yeah, indeed, we should not avoid it completely, because otherwise we are a bit out of the picture.
I think it's wrong to be, but Paolo, I think it's wrong to be too general. I mean, AI could be different things in different contexts, so it has to be context specific. I think it's really important to say that, if I'm looking for the times of the cinema, or, buying something online with an AI-powered agent to help me do that, I think that's fine, I mean, if it's in a certain low-risk context, it's fine. But when it comes to high risk, when it comes to things which matter for people's lives, for their safety, for their well-being, for their mental health, then it becomes a human issue. So I think people are a little bit lost, a little bit vulnerable sometimes, a little bit lonely. And I think if you're one of those people in that situation, then it's easy to rely upon a machine to help you feel a bit better, and that's not wrong. That's not bad. I mean, it's quite inevitable, these AI companions and people getting really close to them. But I mean, I think it reveals something which is missing in their lives. And in that sense, there's a dilemma happening. And I'm not trying to be some sort of old person who talks about the past, but if it's going to suck us into more spaces which are lonely and individualistic and solitary, we will feel more lonely and we will feel more vulnerable. So I think it's a vicious cycle, but it reflects where we are as societies.
So there is a kind of a systemic issue out of which that we cannot escape, and particularly to when you refer to mental health, because it's obviously a concern that is arising. Now the great majority of young people, they rely and delegate completely without any critical thinking, is because of this need. You're right, so you find and help is you just have to push a button, and but it's not the solution in the long term.
I mean, I think, but again, I'm going to challenge you, Paolo, because I think it depends on how you frame this discussion. So, you have to challenge the narrative. You have to challenge what's happening, and I mean that's hard because that's a meta discussion. You need to be informed, and maybe you don't have that information. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe you're young and still learning and still in your formative years. But I mean that that I would challenge the narrative. I would challenge the idea that it's up to humans to figure it out too. I think it's a bit like the other things, like the other examples. There's the examples of like the climate and being environmentally friendly and recycling your packaging, for example, which is a good thing, of course. But it's not only on the consumer, it's on the person to do all the work. I mean, when we find out that all the recycling is not happening in the way it should happen, for example, then, it's also up to big business, up to states to regulate. I mean, it's not up to always about the human to decide about how the algorithm works and how to stop it or to check it or to switch it off. No, I mean, it's there for a purpose. It's trained to influence you. I mean, it's trained to keep you on screen. So it's the wrong question to think that we own. It's just up to us. It's not fair. So I think it really matters to turn that narrative around and say, look, it's also on you guys. It's also on the big tech. It's also on the governments to work out a future which involves humans and their mental well-being and their health and their ability to thrive, together in jobs, outside of jobs, etc. But it's a transition, and that we need a package of transition measures which allows us to work together to get towards different narratives. Otherwise, we're going to get sucked into this hype, onto these negative narratives, and into believing it's just up to us. That's the wrong question.
I don't see much of this happening. Is like the opposite. It's like the big tech. They have discovered the ignorance and the base on this vulnerability is the development of a certain AI, for sure, so that they can exploit and monetize as much as regardless of the mental health of their users. And governments, they don't seem even too much aware of the problem. Maybe you have a different perspective from where you are. We must do something, you are saying.
Well, I think the thing is that unlike in previous times, it's we're quite slow to change. We are quite slow to adapt to new things. And in previous cycles of transformation, of economic cycles, etc., whether it be the advent of electricity, there's always a time of these years and decades go by before it's fully transitioned to the technology which is being put forward. Now, the scale and the speed, it's so quick that it's taking over. You could say it's replacing certain functions much more quickly than in previous times. So I think we've been caught off guard by the speed of change, and our systems, our mechanisms, our ability to discuss and to debate and to change and to regulate is much slower than the speed of the changes we're facing today. That's the problem, is that mechanisms are not necessarily fit for purpose in this very, very fast-moving, breakneck pace of change. If you think about, when ChatGPT came out in 2022, we're only 4 years away since then, and look what's happened. Look how much has changed. It's crazy, the speed.
But why there is not a public service owning some AI? I would be more comfortable if rather than this billionaire based in the States, Europe or somewhere else would also provide such a service. Is it not a public commodity? Is it not something that like water, electricity, and why do we have to not to have alternatives?
No, I think they are. I just don't think they, like many people, I don't think they understand fully. And the trickle-down approach of how things are and the evidence, and to demonstrate with evidence-based work, articles, it doesn't move as fast. So therefore, we're seeing the changes and the threats much more readily and much more big, let's say, much bigger than the responses and the measured responses and the thinking to change. So there is a gap between those two things. So yes, no, of course, efforts are being made. I'm involved in different events myself, which involve governments, and so that they're making steps, but it's much slower than innovation. And so there is a gap that needs to be addressed. But we are letting AI enter people's lives very fast without any guardrails. Sometimes giving information which could be false, which can lead to problems, and that's a problem. That's a real problem. There is regulation, at least in Europe, which is saying, hang on a second, there's a risk aspect which we need to think about. But then, there are political factors at play, and there is a tension between innovation and brakes on innovation. We know those things. But I mean, it's again, there's no magic bullet to solving this thing. But it's a question of time. I mean, look at social media. Social media. We're now discussing banning children from social media. That's how long ago was social media? Social media's been around for like 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's taken 10 to 15 years for us to come to a point of just saying, let's ban it, at least in some countries.
To defend those children that meanwhile they've become adults.
Including my own children. And so the thing is that that's how quickly we react. The time and the speed is a problem.
The fact that it's complex obviously is not a reason to avoid to seek for a solution. And to call the responsibility for governments to act upon, because that's what they are there for, and they are the strongest or the more powerful institution that can do anything. As you mentioned it before, is individuals as such is a bit unfair to put on their shoulders the fact that they should be responsible and very capable of using in the right way the AI. That is increasingly difficult, isn't it?
Of course, it's a shared responsibility. No one's going to dispute that. But I mean, I think that depending on the way it's being used, the context it's being used, it might be more responsibility on one actor than another actor, depending on the level of risk, depending on the level of importance for humans. That could be worked out, Paolo. That could be worked out more clearly, and asking the right questions and changing the narrative a little bit. But for example, I mean, just like when you rewild a place which has been like nature, where you cut down trees, but then you rewild it by planting new trees. One has to make efforts to make sure that new trees or critical thinking is re-sown for people and children and young people growing up, because they of course need to still have as much cognition and the ability to question what's happening than as children gone by. So it's really important that there isn't that we challenge, not just challenge, but we demand a sort of giving back to what matters. Do we know what we're giving back to? What's being lost? Do we know what's being lost? Is cognition being lost? Are opportunities being lost? Is a social projects being lost? If that's the case, then we should point that, we should call that out, and call for it to be reimagined, renewed in some ways. And so that's where the effort should go, I think, is to start calling those things out.
People could be a bit confused and say, yeah, I understand all of it, but what am I supposed to do?
I think that there's a lot of exciting things to be done with AI, and that's for sure. There's a lot of risks, and I'm concerned about the question of how children and young people grow up and the level of cognition. That concerns me, particularly with all this AI slop, all this AI produced content, which is meaningless. I think that the risks are higher for people growing up today, because those who are already grown up, hopefully, they will already have They've already experienced a world without AI, without synthetic content. They've grown up in a world whereby they can probably have maybe more critical thinking, where they've experienced social contact and social gatherings more, perhaps, and understand its value. That may not be the case in the future. I think the adults should, as part of intergenerational justice for future generations, we should really have more. The question is conversations, more conversations together. I think we need to organise a meeting room in different capital cities and talk with people who want to talk about what is it they're feeling, what are the problems, why do I talk to this machine as if it's a person. And I think we need to have a lot of conversations with lots of people, including young people, and empower these people to think differently, to give them the strength to change the narrative, to call out what they want, not what they're being given. And that's a lot of work, Paolo. That means organizing recurring events all the time. Like EAVI could certainly, organize events, do a tour and discuss different issues, and really try to wake up people and discuss these issues and try to get to the core of what's happening. I want to point out one thing is that people are growing up without the ability to talk about things which are on their minds. Young men, boys, for example, sexuality, social media use, for example. There are missing spaces for discussions. It's not about young boys and men. It could be about older persons. It could be about certain people in groups. It could be about people who have been left behind, who are invisible. But there's definitely a need to understand this, that we don't all have the same access to the same spaces. We don't all have the confidence to speak. We're not in that same space as we were before, maybe. So we really have to be cognizant of this need to reach out to those groups, those people who are not there, and to really try to make them part of a discussion. If you're really going to be serious about having conversations, then a massive effort needs to be had to go out to those people and groups, because there are no for example, social media and sexuality, etc. There are no spaces or few spaces for young men and boys to talk about how they feel. If we're all formatted into being a certain way, and the narrative is such, and it's very misogynistic, then young people will simply just emulate those things and not think too much. That's only one example, and we can think about that for other groups. It's really important to think about who are those people in those groups. Why are they having issues? Why do they need to talk? What do we need to tap into, or why do we need to reach out to them and make them part of another conversation, which is much more balanced, much more healthy?
Thank you, Lee, for remind to remind these things, because they are the very basic, and is on one way. I think that we also need, obviously, to rebuild trust each other, to have the possibility of having this conversation. At the same time, to ask this social media to offer by design this possibility, which is we were mentioning at the beginning, rather the opposite at the moment. But thank you very much. It was, as usual, very, very good to have you here. And have a good day. Ciao.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. See you soon.